me record this and say welcome to the Friday call. I'm Ellen. I host these calls. I think many of you have been on before, but if you haven't, welcome. We have a very super awesome special speaker today, Lynne Golodner. Lynne, do it. Help me.
Golonder.
Golodner. Thank you.
Name, I know.
Rolls off the tongue when you say it. Lynne Golodner. She's awesome. I was chatting with her before you guys got on, and I said, Lynne, I've been stalking you, and I think you're really cool, and I want to talk to you more, which is often how I feel when I connect with 10K people. So awesome. She is really cool, and you'll hear her story in a moment. We typically start these calls by going around and everyone does a quick intro. So today, because the topic of this call is your story and crafting a powerful story, using your powerful story to get yourself more clients and customers, Lynne has given us a little challenge to do in our intros today. She said, how about everybody introduces themselves with a short and concise power statement about your business, what really makes you stand out and makes you different, some kind of memorable short kapow statement. So that's your challenge. Mm-hmm. And you'll note that you're all muted because I set the settings differently today. Usually I don't do that. So you guys are going to have to unmute yourselves, or I'll try to do it for you. I know I saw a message from Chris who says he doesn't have a microphone. So if you don't have a microphone or you don't want to talk, introduce yourself in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just go around and call on you and you'll have to unmute yourself. Okay. So let's start with Rachel, who's going to show us how it's done.
Love it. Rachel Nielsen, Chicago Cohort 9. What makes me stand out? My energetic, all-inclusive, non-judgmental perspective.
Nice. And what do you do?
I have two businesses. One is corporate event planning, strategy business event planning, and the other is a consultancy.
Nice. Perfect.
Thanks, Rachel. Who wants to go next? Any volunteers, or I can call on people? I see Jeff Lewis up there. You want to unmute yourself? Can't hear you. Hang on. Jeff, I unmuted you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, Ellen. I'm first time on my phone, so I don't know if this is working well.
It's working.
I'm Jeff Lewis, cohort. Oh, okay, great. National Cohort 9 from Babson, and I own Pacific Rim Environmental. We're an environmental consulting company that represents owners of buildings that have to deal with hazardous materials.
Cool. Can you give us a power statement?
Yeah, we save owners liability and money.
Okay, good.
Kapow. Love it. Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
Let's see. Who else we got up here? Carol Yee.
Hi, I'm Carol Yee, National Cohort 10, kind of international. We do international development projects under the U.S. Agency for International Development. And the USAID Administrators Initiative is a journey to self-reliance, and we want to work with our local partners to really build their capacity to be sustainable and self-reliant.
Nice. Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Emily OBrien, I know you have a power statement.
You do know that about me, Ellen. My name's Emily OBrien. I'm the founder of Earth Angel. We are a full-service sustainability consulting firm that services the film and television industry. We're the only ones on the entire East Coast that specifically service the film and television industry as far as sustainability goes. Our tagline is making movies without making a mess.
Awesome.
And I come from the Tory Burch Cohort 5 out of New York.
Thanks, Emily. How about you, Jennifer McLean?
Hello?
Yep, hi.
Hey. Hi, Jennifer McLean. I'm the owner of JR2 Architects in Cedar Hill, Texas, in the DFW area. And we primarily specialize in educational spaces, but we are also trying to break into other markets and diversify. We're veteran-owned, woman-owned, and I thought my growth opportunity was to go after federal government work, since we have experience in that sector as being veterans, but I've been told by several people that I might not want to do that.
What's your power statement, Jennifer?
I don't believe I have a power statement, other than I have a real belief that schools shouldn't look like prisons.
I like that.
That's a great one.
It's a great one. Yes, definitely.
Write that down. Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so who else do we have here? Chris Bradshaw? You here? I'm going to try to unmute you. Oh, no. Excuse me. Chris can't. I got that in the chat. How about Labricia? Labricia? No? Sue Curran? Labricia, are you there?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I was trying to type my answer. Can you see it? Oh, Lord. Good morning, everybody.
You want to just tell it to us?
Well, yes, I guess I can. I'm Miss Dawson with Dawson's Management, and we do real estate. We just got our 8A certification. And I guess my power statement is we're trying to scale and grow and rebrand our sales. Real estate has been my forte for the last 15 or 16 years, but now we're entering into the government space. We just got our 8A certification. So we're looking to brand, scale, and grow and partner. So I guess my power statement would be looking to scale and grow and da-da-da-da. Help me figure out what my power statement is. I guess I'll know after today's call. Thank you.
Yes, you will. Thank you, Dawson. How about you, Sue Curran? See, here's the problem with me muting everybody. So, Sue, are you here? And I can't tell. How about, okay, I'm just going to go down because I do like to give people a chance. Doug says he can't. Jennifer Labricia. Aura, are you there? Miss Aura? I can't tell. Does anyone else want to introduce themselves?
I will.
Who said that?
I'm Walt Conger from Click Control Marketing.
Hi, Walt.
And I was in class with Lynne, so I know Lynne. Yep. And it was only a matter of time before I'll be doing business with Lynne.
Nice. Can't wait.
But we're a full service digital marketing agency specializing in pay-per-click, social media marketing, and website design. And I would say our power statement is that we don't just drive traffic, we drive ROI.
Cool. Nice.
That's a good one. Thanks, Walt. Awesome. Anybody else?
Hi, yes, this is Ronette Myers. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing awesome.
I'm the president and CEO of Jalen Solutions. We're a woman-owned hub zone here certified in the District of Columbia. We are a dynamic young company that provides executive leadership and coaching, IT services, and professional services to the federal government. And I was in cohort 8. And I truly believe in giving back to the community. And that's one of our key areas that all of our employees do is give back. So it's a little bit about me.
Awesome.
Awesome. Anybody else feeling like expressing their power? Okay. I feel like I want to go because I never really talk about my company. I hardly ever talk about it. It's called White Knight Productions, and we make video production for companies and clients throughout the United States. We make video production easy, affordable, and effective. So that's what I do as my day job. And in addition to that, I have co-founded something called IC Genius. And IC Genius is a peer advisory membership program that is kind of an extension of what we all started in 10KSB. It's a continuation of the community and the support and the education that we all began when we were in class with 10KSB. And we have new groups that are starting in January, mid-January. And we have a special deal going on membership, but it actually expires tomorrow, the 15th. So message me if you want more info on that. It's a very strong program. I'm very proud of it and excited. I see a couple of our members on here today and am looking to grow that next year. So thank you all for being here. I am thrilled that we got Lynne to be our guest speaker today. She and I don't know, we booked this a long time ago. We've been talking about this for a long time. And she's had a really busy schedule. It's been something we've been trying to, get in. And I thought it was appropriate to have her as the grand finale, the last speaker of the year, because story is so important. I just went to a conference. I mentioned this on a different call, I believe, but I just went to this conference in Boston. And a lot of the people who were there speaking were bankers and financial people, like venture capitalists, money folks. And surprisingly to me, I was really surprised to hear all of them talk about how important story is and how important the story, even when they're funding companies and they're looking at the finances and everything, but they care about the story. They were saying you can't get a loan, you can't get even a banker engaged if you don't have a great story. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that surprised me, but it did. This stuff is important. Yeah. So I'm really thrilled you're all here today. And without further ado, Lynne, take it away.
Great. So I'm going to jump in, and it's interesting. Some of you guys had some great statements at the ready, and some were like, okay, I want to figure this out after the webinar, and that's awesome. And I'm a writer, and you'll hear a little bit about my background, but I started my career as a journalist, and I have 8 published books, others in the works. So I really care about the words. One little word can make a huge difference. And the fewer words you use, the more powerful your statement. But the reason that story is so important, there's 2 reasons, and we're going to go through the webinar in just a second. But the first is that people do business with people. And you need to have that heart-to-heart connection. And so if there isn't something that moves you, you just won't engage. And so you want to move the people who are going to connect with your brand. And then the second part of that is that we're in a connection economy. We don't need anything, and so we choose who we engage with, and story can help us make that choice between a company or a business or service product that really speaks to us and one that just doesn't. So I was in Detroit cohort 12. My business is called Your People, yourppl.com, which you can see at the top of the screen. If you get bored, feel free to take a look at the website. Hopefully you won't get bored. So let's jump in. I'm going to start by asking you to think about during this webinar what your story is. And you might think it's something that by the end of the webinar might be different because it's really important to craft this story and take the time to think about what's going to resonate with people. So think about what stories you tell every day. It could be to customers. It could be when you're trying to close a sale. It could be in your office or among your team. That could be where your true stories are. Think about the stories you tell about how your business came to be. So what stories do you tell every day? And I hope you're taking notes as I'm talking because they're going to start to pop into your head and you want to capture them so that we can work with them later. Then think about what draws people to your business. And that is not what you think should bring them, but what they say brings them to you. So for example, when they're sleepless at 2 in the morning and they're Googling and they land on your website and they stay there, why is that? What is their need or their insecurity or their anxiety that your story speaks to and helps to make them feel better? When I say, how do you stand out from the crowd? I mean, truly, how do you stand out from the crowd? And words like, we exceed customer expectations. Those are words nobody can relate to because I don't know what that means. I don't know what my expectations are when I walk in the door. So how do I know if you've exceeded it? So how do you really stand out from the crowd? And that's a different answer. That's a more humble answer, a more human answer. So the best way to market your business is by sharing these heartfelt stories that exhibit the passion you have for what you do. You're all business owners, so you're clearly passionate about something enough to go out on your own. and the purpose that you put into your work. So I say in my business that we build business through storytelling, relationships, and higher purpose. And usually higher purpose comes first. So the purpose that drives a company is where we begin to craft the story. And then once we have the story, we think about who needs to hear it, which is the relationship part. And it is a mutual benefit. It's good for me, it's good for you type of equation. So what is that purpose? And start jotting down, really what's the purpose? What's the why? Once you have these stories, you connect, like I said, in relationships with your target market, and you build that sense of connection. And that creates brand ambassadors. And I do this with clients deliberately, where we create a brand ambassador strategy and implement it to try and really make it happen. But it also happens organically, where people have such a wonderful experience or connect with you that they just want to go and tell people about you. And that's what you want to do with strategic marketing and public relations, is you want to make it seem like it's organic, but it's really well crafted so that happens. And then the most important thing is that this story, this foundational story that is, strategic 3 to 5 paragraphs or so, that you're going to use in every channel. So that's social media, blogging, pitching media, which I'll talk about, and I say most importantly is internal communications. You want to be speaking to people already drinking the Kool-Aid about your brand, more so than bringing new people in, because you are much more likely to get repeat business and upsell people who already know your value than you are to get people walking in the door. You need to do both, but you definitely can't forget or neglect people who've already said, yeah, I see your value. You want to keep talking to them and deepen that conversation. And by the way, you should jump in with questions when you have them. So I don't know, Ellen, if that's something you curate, or if people have questions, just let me know in some way as we go along. Okay, so let's think about the why. Why do you do what you do? I like to say, if I didn't have to earn a living, I have 4 kids. We live in Metro Detroit. It's not a cheap place, cheaper than New York, but it's not a cheap place. If I didn't have to earn a living, would I still do what I do? And I think I would. I might not do it as many hours, but I would still do it. So think about why you do what you do. And for me, it's because I love helping people find the words to tell their story and connect better in the world. So that helps them move the needle on doing business. It's just really fun for me to find those words so that I can see them soar. So why do you do what you do? How are you making a difference in the world with your work? And if you haven't articulated that, that is the first place to start. That is just the most important thing, because it has to be from a place of purpose and mission, more so than anything else. It can't be, oh my gosh, I need to bring in more customers, or I'm really worried about money. It has to be from that higher level of connection and purpose. The other thing is that one of the reasons people engage with brands, even on a very high business level, is that they want to feel like they're important. So we all, it's really funny, we live in this era where we think we're always connected, but we're connecting in a very distant way. It's behind screens. It's from our desk by myself. So right now I'm talking to 20 of you maybe, but I'm sitting here alone. And so, yes, I'm hearing your voices and I'm seeing you. So it's a little bit better than, let's say, a social media post. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not looking into anyone's eyes right now. I'm not knowing that I matter. And people need that. We need it more and more in this day and age. So if your business can respond to that through your story and make people recognize their importance, you will win a lifelong customer. It's a win-win. You're genuinely showing them how they matter, and they're becoming endeared to your brand. So think about how you do that. And if you don't, let's start. It's really, really important. So let's look at the numbers first. Why is storytelling even something worth talking about? Well, if you look at these stats, stories sort of rule our world. Every 60 seconds, there are 700,000 Google searches. And I'm sure that number is already old since I put this in here. And every 60 seconds, 60 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube. And we're sending 168 million emails. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. The number of ads that appear online every year, in the trillions. We're consuming so many words every single day. We don't take them all in. Some of them get lost because there are so many. But how can yours stand out? And that is what we're trying to achieve. But our brain can remember stories better than anything else. So when there's something descriptive, when there's something, when there's heartstrings, when there's a happy outcome, we remember that. And I want to just share with you guys, my youngest son of my 4 kids attends a Waldorf school. And if any of you know what a Waldorf school does, they don't have textbooks. The kids build their own textbooks during the year. And the teachers don't read from materials or books. They have to know the stories of the curriculum already committed to memory. So they stand up there in front of the classroom and they're making eye contact and engaging with the kids from the minute school starts in the morning. They're not reading from something. Think about how that lesson is going to penetrate the kids better than if they're just looking at a book. And so stories, we start with stories from the minute we're born. We are lulled by that. We are comforted by that. And we have to speak to that in our businesses too. So every business and every company has a story behind them. And I'm going to argue that Goldman Sachs alumni have better stories than others because it comes from a place of passion and personal journey. And that personal and professional do need to marry together into your strategic storytelling. It can no longer just be, we're a company that does X, Y, and Z. It has to have a human face because people do business with people. I'm going to keep repeating that because it's so true. So you have to infuse your business storytelling with something personal. There needs to be a little bit of your journey in there. I use the word spiritual when I talk about my business, and that might scare some people away, but it might connect some people with me because it's a huge part of what I do and how I approach my work. It's not a particular denomination, but I really look at a very spiritual universe perspective in how I run my business, and people need to know that. And that really infuses what I do with value. And so I'm not afraid to use that word and to tell a little bit about my own spiritual story. So if you try to separate that personal, you're really losing something essential to your business story. So in the 10KSB program, we worked on vision and mission. I'm going to share with you a little bit about how I view it. And I was really lucky to, when I was starting my business 11 years ago, be mentored by one of the owners of Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Paul Saginaw has been a great mentor to me all these years. And I was part of his Entrepreneurs Club when I was first forming my business. And this was sort of how I learned vision and mission with him. So vision is not really for public consumption. It's not something you publish necessarily, but it's how you want to change the world in big terms. It's something you write on the wall in your office that you infuse in your team. You use it to build your team. And it's that vision of like, how really am I going to change the world? The mission is specifically how you go about it. So, I'm trying to infuse the world with purpose and make the world a better place by connecting people across divides. That could be my vision, and I should probably say it tighter than that. But my mission is storytelling, relationships, and higher purpose for entrepreneurs, organizations, and nonprofits. I'm specifically going to help people craft their story, build those relationships so they can share their story, and connect and build their bottom line. And that's really what I'm going to do for mission. So think about vision and mission are a really big part of storytelling. And then how often are you telling this? So once you craft your story, it's got to be everywhere. It has to be on every communication that you have, every platform, every marketing piece, everything that you put out there. So, where are you telling this? It should be rolling off the tongue. Okay, so how do we do this, right? Word of mouth marketing is the best way that you bring in business. The marketing research shows that you need to be touched by a brand an average of 7 times before you take action with that brand. That could be they see you on TV, they find an ad, they visit your Facebook page, they go to your website, and then somebody refers them to you. And that is how they finally take action. So when somebody calls and says, hey, I'd like to get a quote for working together, and you say, how'd you hear about us? They say, oh, my neighbor Cindy told me, or my sister, or my best friend, or whatever. But really, they're forgetting all of those subtle messages that they saw and other stories about your business. And it was just when there was a personal connection that it inspired them to take action because it's a trusted resource. So word of mouth marketing is the best way that you can grow your reach. And you have to do this strategically. So think about who loves what you do. It could be satisfied customers. It could be your staff They are the best way that you can promote what you're doing and arm them to be brand ambassadors. I would argue that every single role in a company is marketing, or it should be. And if you empower every person in that business to spread the word, then they will. If you invite them to, if you show them that you trust them to. Every customer engagement is another opportunity for word of mouth marketing. If you think about it, if you, as I said, I'm a parent of 4 kids. Every time I'm in one of their schools, anybody I engage with there, it's a marketing opportunity for the school. So if I have a rough interaction with the teacher, or there's a principal who is rude, which doesn't happen, but if it does, that is negative marketing for the school. That's with every single engagement that you have is a piece of marketing. What would it take to inspire brand ambassadors? What would it take for them to spread your story for you? They need to get something out of it. So there needs to be a mutual benefit. If they feel important, if they feel valued by you, if you've given them a Starbucks gift card every time they refer you, I mean, whatever it is, think about that mutual benefit. In order to create word of mouth marketing, not only do you need your story, but you need to understand your customers. And when people tell me, everybody could be my customer, I kind of glaze over, because we can't reach everybody. So you have to identify as narrowly as possible, as specifically as possible, who is going to do this. And so if you could identify 5 brand ambassadors, that is worth more than trying to get everybody to spread the word for you. Like, how could you make it a really sweet deal to share the story for those 5 people to take it out there and say, I'm going to talk about your business. So let's think about those questions. And I can make this PowerPoint available for you, because there are a lot of questions in here that you would like to work on, I'm sure, in the future. So let me tell you my story. Who am I? Why am I sitting here telling you that I know what to do here? So I started Your People 11 years ago after spending 15 years as a journalist. I was in New York and in Washington, D.C. in the 90s, came back to Michigan, where I'm from, and I spent a lot of time working for local publications and freelancing for national magazines and newspapers. I taught college English, and I do that on and off whenever I can find the time, because I love teaching writing as a way to empower people to have their voice and get out there and change the world. I have 8 books, as I mentioned. And then I started this business when journalism was changing. My life was changing. I actually was divorcing my first husband. I had 3 children who were 1, 3, and 5. The economy, as we all remember, was in the toilet. And I had worked for myself as a journalist, and all these newspapers and magazines were shutting down. And my ex-husband is a musician by trade, very talented, but we all know how hard it is to make a living as a musician. So I said, boy, I better do something that's going to feed these kids and make sure I don't lose my house. So I created Your People. And my vision was that we are in this connection economy, but we're lonelier than ever. And so if businesses could fill that void in some way, they'd win a lifelong customer, and they would help somebody to feel more whole as well. That was sort of the concept. And I really just took my communication skills and applied it to businesses. But that instinct that we are building community through business, and then using story, relationships, and higher purpose to do it, was sort of my gut level instinct. Like, I think this could work. And I'll tell you a quick little story. My very first client is the only one that I've cold called. It was a grocery chain in Metro Detroit called Hiller's, which doesn't exist anymore. But I did a lot of food writing as a journalist, and I thought I could do something for this business. And it was a company that my mom had shopped at for 35 years. It was family owned, and I knew that there was this very special place in the community for this business, but we didn't really know much about their story. And I just pitched the CEO and said, I think I can do something for you. And we became very close. We worked together for several years. I ended up revising his website, blogging for him, with him, e-blast, social media, in-store events, media pitching, everything. But when we first were getting to know one another, he said, your idea that, building business by building community is stupid. It's never going to work. And here was a guy in his 60s who was this great entrepreneur. And I was like, oh my God, my idea is horrible. It's never going to take off. And I was devastated. But a year later, he came back to me with his tail between his legs and apologized. He said, you know what, you're right. You need to build community. as a part of doing business, and that's how you succeed. And I was so relieved. So that's where I come from. And I'll tell you that part of the inspiration for my business happened on Facebook. It was 2007. I was going through the changes I mentioned to you before. It was late at night. It was like 10 o'clock. My kids were little, as I said, they were 1, 3, and 5. And I was on Facebook while I was talking on the phone with a friend that I've known since 7th grade. And I thought, what's going on here? You know, I'm kind of a cerebral person. I was looking at this, and we were on Facebook, and I saw 50 people from our high school class were on at that moment. And I thought, what is going on? You know, like, I should be in bed. I shouldn't even be doing this. And yet I'm on the phone with my friend. That's not compelling enough. We're all on Facebook, and there were 50 of us in the same situation who were on Facebook. It made me realize that in an economy when we are allegedly connected more than ever, we are lonelier than ever, and we are hungry for that human connection. And that's when my light bulb went on, and I said, if a business can fill that hunger, then it can succeed. So you need to tell your story in 3 ways. In print, which is anything that you can walk away with. It's a marketing brochure, it's a pamphlet, it's a flyer, it's a newspaper story. Online, so any of the digital communications, and face-to-face. So even as you do all these things, you cannot forget to engage human to human. Okay, that's really, really important. All right, so let's look at how we do this. And this is something that I think you guys should think about as well. Probably most of you are doing this as we speak, but you're doing great work. You do things in a unique way. That needs to be in your story. But how are you also making the world a better place? So it's either how you make meaning, your purpose behind what you do, or any way you contribute. So for example, I have a policy at my company that we do a pro bono PR campaign every quarter, and it's a part of the business. I don't do it to get exposure. It's part of the philosophy and the purpose behind what I do. But it has gotten my story out there more. It's not the purpose, not the reason I do it. It's just when you do good, you do well. And so how do you give back? Some of the ways that clients of mine do this would be they reward their staff when there's growth. So one of my clients is Fred Astaire Dance Studio, and the one in Michigan here, the franchise, every time they have a boom year, bottom line, the revenues grow, they reward their staff, their instructors, by taking them on a team trip. So they've gone to Universal Studios in Orlando. They've gone up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and done hiking and camping, and they take them places when they meet their goals. And that is a story worth telling. So I've done media for them about how they grow their business because it's very people-focused on how they reward their staff. That has gotten media attention. So think about that. They didn't do it for the reason of getting attention, but by being authentic in who they are and how they take care of their team, they're gaining exposure and their story is going big. Okay. Just a little plug. I do a podcast called Make Meaning, and it's featuring people who make meaning through their work and find purpose in life. So if any of you feel that that is something you do, that's a great place for exposure, and hit me up. I can definitely book you for an interview coming up. But those are opportunities to share your vision, your mission, your purpose, and a platform that's going to expand your reach as well. Okay, so why did you found your company? Why did you even create it? You know, you could get a job somewhere, you're good at what you do, you could just collect the paycheck and go home. So why did you create it? That's where you start when you're building your story. And then how do you make a difference? So like I said, you know, are you giving back to the community? Do you sponsor a local baseball team? Are you mentoring high school students? Like what are you doing that makes a difference in your work? So again, higher purpose comes first, then relationships, or then storytelling, then relationships. I got to flip those around. So answer that question. Now, as a writing instructor, I can tell you need to show rather than tell. So that's where we get really specific. So saying something like, we exceed customer expectations is not showing, it's telling, and it's very vague. So how do you do that? So if you are, like, I can say, you we get people on TV every time they ask. I mean, that's one little thing. We increase the number of engagements on somebody's Facebook page, or, get really specific. Be memorable. So when you can be specific, you can show, not tell, people will remember you. So when you think about what excites you, the passion behind your work, those are the words that you should be putting in your story, because you're going to just come alive, and those words will be vibrant and vivid and memorable. We spend a lot of time every day managing information, and we don't always act on it. So one missed opportunity in storytelling is call to action. So every time I do an e-blast for a client, every single content section has a call to action. What do I want people to do? I just did an ad for a school that's a client of ours, and it's for enrollment. And they just wanted to put on the ad, their website and their phone number. I said, no. You have to make it easy for people. What do you want them to do? So we said, reserve your spot in our next tour. And we put the link. Just really easy. So make it easy for people to engage with your story. And also, because they're inundated with stories, the tighter yours can be, the more concise, the fewer words, but packing a punch, the more you're going to stand out, because they're lost after 2 sentences. You need to be quick, tight, really interesting. So I want to know more. So I want to keep digging. So show, don't tell is the writer's mantra, and I can definitely help you with that. Okay, so what makes a good story? Anytime you can pull at the heartstrings. So if you had a realization, a light bulb moment, a trauma that led to doing life differently, that's got to go in your story. Did you survive something unimaginable? Did you lose somebody important to you who really inspired you, and because of them, you're building your business? That goes in the story. Don't be afraid to cry. So I had a client, it's my biggest client, Samaritas. They're a nonprofit here in Michigan. They used to be Lutheran Social Services in Michigan. And in 2012, we did a media pitch about teenagers in foster care who just really want to be adopted. And so 2 really brave teenagers, they were 14 and 15 years old, were willing to meet with a TV reporter and share their stories. I mean, we were all crying. And the vice president of Child and Family at the time, who's now the president of the organization, she was interviewed about adopting older children. And it was right before Christmas, and she just started to cry on camera. And every time I watch that video, I cry again. And I was there, and I saw it live on TV, and it's 6 years ago now. But she basically shared, and she's a mom herself, she said, if my children didn't have anyone to go home to, and she just lost it. And it was like we could all relate to that. So what in you can connect with another? How can you pull those heartstrings in a really authentic way? Another thing that makes a good story, as I mentioned, is how you're helping others or making the world better. So if it's really important for your team to help out at a local soup kitchen, that needs to be in your story. And it's not doing it for the purpose of gaining exposure. It's true to who you are. So it's okay to share that. You're not doing it to get attention. It's who you are. And that's important, and that means something. Universal truths are something that we need to find in all of our content. So what is true for me that's true for you? How can we stand in the same place? And anything that you do that helps people to bridge those divides, that's worth putting in your story. Like I said, people do business with people, so you want to put that human face on your organization and build human connection across the distance. Always speak from strength. So you don't want to say anything about the competition in your story. You want to just stand alone. I believe there's enough business to go around. So I don't need to trash any other PR firm or marketing firm, because they do what they do in their best way, and I do what I do in my best way, and there's enough for all of us. I couldn't possibly work with everybody who needs PR. So speak from the place of strength, what you do well, not what you do above the competition. Okay, is there such a thing as a bad story? So I'm going to say yes. And sometimes telling the wrong story can hurt your organization. So the ways in which we tell bad stories unknowingly is when we make it all about me. So here's what I want. I want money. I want customers. I want this. It's me, 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 me. Nobody wants to hear about me. They want to hear about themselves. So if we can relate in some way, your content needs to speak to the person who's listening, not about you. So even your website shouldn't be all about you. It should speak to the person who's coming to it, which is why you need to know your audience with laser sharp detail. But when they come to your website at 2 in the morning because they can't sleep, what is their concern? How can your content allay that worry? That's really, really important. A bad story is when you're always selling. So, here's what I can do for you. You need to call me. I need to, become my customer. It happens by being authentic. So when you relate to someone, eventually they will remember you and they will come back to you. So for example, I pitch media all the time for clients, but I have really good relationships with journalists because I'm not using them. I only have relationships that are real. And so there are journalists who will call me and say, hey, I'm doing a story on this. Do you know anyone? And even if I don't have a client that fills that need, I will look high and low and find people for them. So I'm not getting paid for that. I'm not getting a client in their story, but I'm helping somebody in a genuine way because that's who I am. And they'll remember that. And then they'll take my pitch when I respond. It's a win-win. It's a mutual benefit. And so it's not always about me. It's not always selling my customers. So I have 2 examples. I had 2 clients that I failed with, and I'm happy to say that I think that's all. Maybe there's more. I hope they don't come out of the woodwork, but I had a client years ago who started a high-end dating service. And when I say high-end, it was like $9,000 per client. Like they were going to pay that much to find their match. When you can go on Match.com for like $35 or something, it's kind of hard to understand why somebody would pay for that. And I was trying to help the client get out there, but she didn't want to give any tips or information or educate people as a way in to get to know her business. She just wanted the clients who would pay the big bucks. So I couldn't do anything with it. It just, there wasn't a sense of giving or educating or caring. It was, no, I just want the clients who are going to pay me the $9,000 to find their match. And I do think that the approach I was taking would have gotten her to more people that would do that. But she just wanted the high-end clients, and that was it. And I think that no matter how high-end your business is, you have to have an air of education and information and helping, because you just never know. The other one was this company that did tax resolution. So basically, you screwed up with your taxes and you were into the IRS for a lot. They would help bail you out. And the same thing. They didn't want to give any tips for how to avoid that. They just wanted people who were in deep, who would come and pay them to get out of it. So I couldn't work with it. So your story has to give, and I'm assuming all of you have an element of this, an element of how you help people and how you care. That has to be in your story to avoid making it one of those bad stories. The reason the bad stories are so bad is because there's a hidden agenda, and there's something that you want out of it. Storytelling has to be for the sake of telling the story. Here's what I want to share. I want to share my passion. I want to share this, this information so it empowers you. I speak all the time about how to build your business and how to tell your story. And I don't expect all the people listening to become my clients. I just know that by sharing what I know, I'm helping others. And in the karmic sense of the universe, it's going to come back to me at some point. And that has to be your agenda. Anytime you have a negative perspective or tone in your story, that's the tone that you're setting for your company. So it comes back to bite you. And if you're coming from a place of fear, you're worried about your business, you are worried that you're not going to make ends meet, or you're desperate in some way, that story that's going to be in the story, and it's going to put people off. So it's like a downward spiral. So you start on that path and it just feeds itself. So these are really important questions that I would encourage you guys to spend some time with. These are the questions I would start asking you if you were to become my client. So just they start getting specific. So number 2 for me really resonates because I have clients all over the country, but I am really proud to be from Detroit, and I love Detroit, and it's a huge part of who I am and who my business is. And there's something about the Detroit story that I think represents my business and speaks to me. So your locale and the people who are there, I think there's a lot that you could uncover, some really important nuggets. Success stories are great to put in your storytelling, but so are your failures. So sharing where you had a low point. I've told the story about, being a single mom of 3 kids, 1, 3, and 5 years old, at a time when the economy was in its horrible recession, and how scary that was. And there are people who relate to that. There are women who have been single parents who have had to support their families, who can say, I've been there, and I came out on the other end. I mean, frankly, it made me incredibly scrappy because there was no choice. I had to support my family. And so the more specific I can get in my journey, the more universally relatable it is. So those specifics really matter. Telling the ages of your kids, telling the details of your situation. I tell a story about how I remember I was thinking about it at the time, what I would get really afraid. What if my great idea isn't such a great idea and I don't have any customers? And I remember thinking, well, the worst thing that happens if I lose my house and I have no income is I have to move in with my parents. And I realized, okay, I'm not going to be homeless. So I don't want that, but I can do this. So once I identified for myself what my horrible outcome was, I could persevere. And I'm very open about that low point, because I think it's human and it's relatable, and it shows that, if I can do it, you can do it. The other night Tuesday night, I went to see Michelle Obama here in Detroit. She was amazing. And she tells the story about how she was from a poor family on the south side of Chicago, and she didn't plan to become the first lady. But she wants to tell people that her story is the story of everybody, that it doesn't matter where you started. When you work hard and you do things for the right reasons, you can do anything. And that's inspiring. And I think all of you have that story as well.
Hey, Lynn.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a couple questions. Do you want to take them now?
Yeah, let's do it. You've heard a lot from me here.
Okay, let me read them to you. One is from Jennifer McLean. Sorry. She is the one who mentioned that she believes schools should not look like prisons in the intro, and we all kind of liked that, but she says, does saying that set a negative tone? Her business partner has suggested that might be the case.
Yeah, I think it's a catchy statement, but I think you're right in that. Because there's the negative, they should not be. So then you're painting the picture of the prison. And so that image is in our heads. So I agree with you. And I think if you were giving a speaking engagement or some kind of, talk, you could bring that concept in. But I would say I wouldn't use the word prison, and I wouldn't use not the negative in your story, because you want it to be tight and every word has to have a lot of real estate. So I would say, I would think about what's the opposite of prisons. Like, what are the architectural elements that you want to see in schools? And I wrote a lot about home design, architecture, real estate when I was a journalist. And so, are you talking about light? Are you talking about windows? Are you talking about, open, like wide hallways and natural lighting and, elements like that we would start to have the conversation about those visual characteristics that you'd like to see in schools. And then I would probably want to use those words in your storytelling. So with every time you're telling your story, you're conveying that image of light and openness and maybe bridges and maybe, like those visuals. So I think I would encourage you to use architectural language in your story that paints a picture, shows rather than tells, so that you can have that vision of what a school should be really deliberately and really vividly in your storytelling.
Okay, great. So Jennifer just wrote, we believe that schools should be inspiring and evoke thought and curiosity.
I think that's great. And I would want to work with you to massage it so that we can add some really visual and memorable words. So did you say thought and creativity in that?
Thought and curiosity.
Thought and curiosity. So I would want to pull that out a little bit. And by the way, guys, storytelling is not something that happens quickly. It really should take like 3 months to sit down and work with the words and live with the words and play with them a little bit, and a lot of mixing and matching. But I would look at thought and curiosity, and I would explore those words and see, what does that mean? What does that look like? And I would try to get really specific and vivid in your language.
Great, thank you. And there's one more question. Lori Anding is asking about nonprofits and nonprofits.
Mhm.
And she says that a lot of times their story is about how much they need money.
Oh.
But she says, shouldn't they focus more on their mission, their heartfelt story, and then add a good call to action? Do you have any tips for nonprofits?
Yeah, so I've had a ton of nonprofit clients. I actually even started a nonprofit in 2016. It's called One Earth Writing. So I totally relate to the need for raising money, but that is not the mission or the story of any organization. So let's just put that on the table. Every organization, for-profit, nonprofit, needs money, and that is not any way that ever should be in a story. I'd like to quote one of the CEOs that I've worked with for years, and he says that nonprofit is a tax designation, not a business plan. And that is true. So a nonprofit just means that you don't pay taxes, you invest the income back into the organization. So put that money away from the story. Nonprofit does not even need to factor into it. It's what you do and why you do it, who you serve and what you're trying to do. So again, positive language, outcome-based language, it's also got to be a language of lifting up as opposed to, oh, we're so superior that we're going to help these poor people in need. That can't be in the story either. So we can't have a whiff of that. We need to look at it as human to human, something that pulls at the heartstrings that we all can get on board with. But the money comes when we do things for the right reasons. Like there's that cliche, do what you love and the money will come. And that has to be what it is. Put the passion and purpose into everything, into the story, into the work, and the money will show up. Because when you're coming from a fear-based, need-based place of this organization needs money, it stifles the storytelling and it stifles the pipeline. And here's where I'm going to throw in a little bit of the spiritual side of me, but money needs a flow. It's an energy and it needs to come and go. And we all have to think of it in that way, and including nonprofits, that it enables us to do things and we put it out there so we can do them. And so anytime we're holding tight to money, it has to do with something else. Anytime we're afraid that we're not going to have the money, it prevents us from actually doing the work. And so that heart needs to lead. So sorry to get preachy, but I hope that helps with the nonprofit perspective.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah. Should I go on?
Yes, please.
All right. So I've talked a lot about story. So the inherent in the idea of storytelling is somebody who's telling the story and somebody who's receiving the story. So that's the relationship part of things. And relationships really are how business should be done, period. I mean, in any industry, it is about people doing business with people. So once you have this great story crafted and it has passion and purpose and meaning and heartstrings, who gets to hear it? And this is another exercise that's going to take you some time, because you cannot do business with everyone, and not everybody is going to relate to your business. So let's try to articulate with psychographics and demographics who that is as specifically as you can. And now that you've been specific in your storytelling, you can get good at the specifics. So in PR, we talk about publics, primary publics and secondary publics. And that breaks down to very easily, public relations is relationships with key publics. So that's really what I do for a living. It's building relationships with key audiences. So their primary audience is the one that's going to do business with you. So who is your direct audience? But the secondary public is sort of the bridge. They're going to get you to your primary audience. So for example, media is a secondary public. So if I get you on TV or in the paper or on the radio, that is going to connect you to your primary public. That's a secondary public. So if there's anybody who's going to refer your business, they're a secondary public. And you need to be having relationships with them as well as with your primary public, and sometimes even more so. That's the networking, the referral building. But again, it has to be strategic, not handing out your business card and schmoozing and moving on to the next one. It's really deliberate. So think about who you need to build relationships with, and you might have strategies for all of them. Customers, shareholders, employees, internal communications, I repeat, is more important than external communications. You have a wealth right there under your brand. You need to use it. But media, referrals, brand ambassadors, business is relationships. And that's, once you know the words to use, then you know how to relate to people. And There has to be that mutual benefit going back and forth. So let's think about who needs and wants to hear from you and how you can get to them. So when you focus your story around mutual benefit, so what's in it for them, what's in it for me, let's make it a win-win. Like I said, media is one. I pitch media all the time, my company does, but we don't just say, hey, media, TV station, give us a segment, great, it's wonderful. We recognize that there's benefit for them in booking us. They need to fill that spot. We tailor our pitches so that it speaks to them and their need. There's benefit to our client because they get exposure. There's benefit to us because we're succeeding in our job. But we look at it as a win-win all around. So we approach it from that angle. Strategic partnerships, how can you align with other organizations or people so that you both get something out of it and build that relationship. Your website, I mentioned this earlier, your website content needs to be about the person coming to your website. So it needs to speak to them and their fears and concerns and worries and how you resolve them. E-blasts are wonderful tools to stay in front of people you do business with because the 7 degrees of, or 7 touches of a brand before you take action needs to constantly be happening. So you need to remind people, we're here, still we want you, do business with us again. Make sure there's a call to action, but that e-blast could be monthly, it could be weekly, it could be however frequently is appropriate. Social media, same thing, not selling, but win-win, engagement, conversation, relationship. I love blogging. It is a great way to establish your thought leadership and your expertise and give people information they can use. But blogs are only valuable if you're going to market them, so you want to use your other platforms. All of these should cross-promote and cross-market. I do a lot of strategic events for clients because that's a way that you can be face-to-face with people. And then, of course, anything that's going out deliberately, advertising, marketing materials, anything like that, it needs to speak to your audience as much as carry your story.
Lynn, there's one more question.
Yeah. Sure.
Sorry. This is Lynn again. She says, if you have a very blue collar business, how are those blue collar workers your brand ambassadors? They typically might not be as social media savvy or online as much. Work and family is their focus. Can they truly be a brand ambassador?
What kind of business? Who is this that's asking?
Lori, do you want to unmute?
Sure. It's a tile business.
Okay.
So these people are typically, their primary language is another language. And what I mean by they're just working really hard because they need to put, food on their table, and their focus is family and work and really nothing outside that. So I have a hard time. I'm very, you are speaking my language, first of all. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. So with this particular client, I understand the brand ambassador part, but that gives me trouble with their actual, employees.
Well, so you're talking about your team, or you're talking about
I'm talking about a client that has 80 people who work for him that are typically, just hardworking blue collar people. I don't see them as brand ambassadors. I just don't.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more to understand it fully, but I don't think that blue collar, white collar disqualifies somebody or qualifies somebody from being a brand ambassador. It's about people. And I think that if, I think first of all, the issues of like family and hard work are values that everybody could get on board with. And so that could be rolled into the storytelling. But I know people who have very little, like don't have 2 nickels to rub together, and they're on social media. They've got really nice cell phones. Like, it's just kind of the era we're in. But I think that it's about relating human to human. So I have a client who is in the industrial insulation business, and their staff is very much in the field. Same situation of what you're talking about. And we have been working on building brand ambassadors amongst their team. And these are great guys who are great at what they do. And it's much more, hardworking in the field than go home and do the family thing. And so we're strategically creating communications channels that speak to everybody. So like we'll do a couple newsletters, twice a year, where they just send an email out, or they text it out if that's an easier way that people can receive it. But we also are doing things like, instead of doing like a formal cerebral brand ambassador workshop for their team, we're when they get together for like the holiday party, I'm just sort of talking to people and getting to know them. And we're sort of building those relationships so that maybe 6 months down the road, we might do a workshop when they do like a team pizza party. And I come in and I just, as I get to know the people, I find what's meaningful to them and what's of value to them, and just sort of relate to them on that level. And so I think you got to speak that person's language if it's different from yours, but like literally and metaphorically, because everybody wants to matter and everybody wants to be of value. And that's what developing brand ambassadors is all about. And so when we can, and that's a really big part of understanding the audience, is how do we engage with them the way that they want to engage? What do they worry about, and how can we relieve that worry? So it's about finding that mutual benefit, and it may be a different platform, maybe a different vision, but I think it's still possible, definitely.
You nailed it. I think the issue is, as you said, spiritually, we are all connected no matter how much money we make.
Yeah.
We still want to care for our families. We still need to work. Oh my gosh. Very excellent point. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. A lot of it is about listening too, like really making sure that you see the person and they know that you see them. And so that went back to the whole like bad stories, and like when it's all about me, people will tune me out. But when I say, and let me give you guys a really good example. So I just taught 2 classes at University of Detroit this fall, and I had amazing students, and a lot of them were not born in America. So there's a lot of English was not the first language, and I'm teaching a writing class, freshman composition. And but my students were incredible. And there was this one kid who was so angry, and I had them journaling all the time. And his journal was like, he hated everything, hated everyone, totally angry. He was 18 years old, sweet, adorable kid. And he just had this like anger, like you could see it when he walked in the classroom. And so I really started just talking to him and saying, I don't think you're so angry. I clearly could see that there had been stuff that had happened in his life that he built up a wall, and he felt like the world was out to get him. And I wanted him to know that I'm not part of that. And so we had this banter that went back and forth all semester. He'd walk into the classroom and I'd be like, hey, how are you? And I had this big smile, and he had to like, try to look angry, but he couldn't help but smile back. And the other students loved it. And I'm like, I think that there's some happiness in you, and I'm going to bring it out. And he's like, no, there isn't. And on the last day of class, I gave him a card, and it was this sappy card I got at the drugstore that said, I believe in you. And I just wrote, I'm so glad you were in my class. I'm really going to miss you. And he was like, I did not expect this. And I mean, but I meant it, like I wanted him to know that at least one person in the world saw that he was this wonderful person. And I didn't have to do that as a writing professor. My heart went out to this kid, and I didn't want him to go through life being so angry. And I wanted him to know that there can be good in the world and people who really just appreciate him. And that's all it is. It's just, what do you see in this person or this audience, and how can you let them know that they matter? So anyway, sorry to preach, but it's so powerful. You can change the world by doing this.
You just made me cry, so it works.
Any other questions before I finish up here? No? Okay. All right, so we talked about getting specific, know your audience really well. And like I said, this is a journey. It takes some time. In public relations, the goals that we set are either changing behavior or attitude, and we're supposed to measure them. And that's really hard to do. I hate metrics because I'm like, how do I measure if I changed your opinion about something? Obviously, we can do surveys and evaluations, and if people are truthful and self-reporting, that's helpful. But it is really hard to know our impact. You can see behaviors a little better because if somebody walks in the door and they engage with the business, well, clearly that's a behavior. They took action. But the goals in what we're doing are changing behavior, changing attitude. All right. I like to give this to you guys, and again, I'll make this available, but how to know how to use your story in different places. So you pitch media. there are times you think something is such a great story and you want to send it out there, and it's not necessarily for everybody. So these are reasons why you will do a media story. There's got to be a mutual benefit. The viewers, the readers, the listeners, there needs to be some takeaway for them. It has to be a story that not everybody's telling, and you need to be able to go on the record. So a lot of times when I'm helping nonprofits, especially human social service organizations, tell stories, if clients aren't willing to be interviewed, it's probably not a go. And we don't want to take advantage, but you have to be on the record. It's a blog if it's still relatable to others, but you can do it tightly. And think of blogs as when you go on vacation, you take 200 pictures, and that's your album of the vacation. A blog is one moment, one picture in that album. So it's sort of like a snippet, and it's like a poem. You can like get it really tightly, and you don't have to write it in poetry form, but it is a moment. It's a snapshot. Oh, and by the way, blogs are really a great tool for building website traffic and SEO if you do it strategically. I'm sure Walt Conger could talk about that, but it's something that we use for all of these reasons. A story goes into an e-blast if it is to an internal audience or a specific customer audience. Sometimes it's new staff members, new certifications. So it's driving people already engaging with you to do more business with you and giving them reason for that, making them feel really good about engaging with your organization. And the story goes on social media if it's part of a trending conversation, if it has some great visuals, if you can give some takeaway or information or just inspire people and make them feel great. This says every job is marketing. It starts at home. And I mentioned this earlier. Please, please, please make use of your team because they're already there. They want to be of value. And if you empower them to share your story, you got a lot of brand ambassadors right there at home. So think about if you've been holding the reins pretty tightly and you've been the only one speaking about your company, maybe it's time to let go a little bit and empower people to carry your story from their perspective, giving them the words that you've crafted in your story so that everybody is furthering the mission of your organization. One quick little thing, the last bullet point here is about how their social media presence impacts your business. And I know you can't legally control what other people put on social media, but I am in an image industry and I have not hired people because of how they present themselves on social media. You may have been in the same position, but if people know they work for you and they're out there on social media, their actions speak about your business. And so think about the stories they're telling, and are they the stories you want to be telling? This is all part of a very carefully navigated and curated brand ambassador effort. And we have to handle that with kid gloves, but it has to be handled too. So think about a couple little lofty ideas to finish with here. Let the mission drive everything. When I build a PR plan, the mission is the first thing at the very top of the 10-page document because everything we do needs to tie back to that mission. The mission needs to drive what you do, including your storytelling and your marketing and PR. Think about also that people give 2 excuses as to why they're not going to engage with you. They can't afford it. They don't have the time. They're never the right reasons. Those are the reasons people pull out. But the reason that they don't engage really is because they don't believe in the value of whatever it is that you're asking them to buy. Because you can find the money when you think it's really valuable, and you can make the time. And so when you show them how engaging with you invests in themselves, and that can be through your story, those excuses go away. Moving forward, this is just a little plug of different things that I do. It all starts with that business messaging development. Sometimes people come to me and say they want media pitches, and we go back a step and we start with crafting that story because it hasn't been done, just so that you know what I'm here for. And if you have questions, I am here for you. So I am so glad that I was able to chat with all of you today. I hope that all of this content was valuable, and I hope you're going to be telling some great stories.
Lynn, that was so good. Thank you.
Yeah.
If there are more questions, I would like to encourage people to reach out to Lynn directly, as she so kindly shared her contact information here. And this was awesome. My story is Goldman Sachs really turned my business around. and was so important to me on many, many levels that I love giving back to this community. I really value all of you. And that's why we started IC Genius. That's why I do these calls. Every time I connect with a 10KSB person, I'm amazed at their story and what they're doing. And I just love that. So I really enjoy it when people reach out to me. I love hearing the genius of people like Lynne, sharing what you do every Friday. I just want to reiterate that there's no more calls this year due to the holidays. This is the last one. And then we start up again in January. And I currently have people booked through, I think, March.
Wow, that's awesome.
Which is amazing. This is a great community.
Yeah.
But if anyone who is on this call would like to nominate yourself or someone who you think would be a great speaker, it makes me feel more comfortable to be booked, in advance. I'd like to keep doing this as long as people get value from it. So please reach out to me if you do have suggestions or if you'd like to self-nominate. I know we all have valuable information to share. So
thanks for doing this, Ellen. It's an amazing platform and great way for people to connect across the country. And I'm just really honored that you included me in it.
Thank you. Well, I'm thrilled that you agreed to do this, and I can't wait to talk to you one-on-one and learn more about you and your work. Oh. And thank you all for being here. You're awesome. You guys know how to reach me, and now you know how to reach Lynne. So please do that and come back, whatever the date is, that first Friday in January.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Great job, Lynne.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.